Infants on Thrones. The philosophies of men mingled with humor. We are the Core.
Welcome back to Infants on Thrones. I'm Glenn Ostland, and this is episode 567, Making Space for Me in a Hostile World, Part 1. And this is an interview that I did with a friend of mine, Tami Whiting. Now, Tami and her husband, Steve, were friends with me, my wife, Krista, and also Jake, as you know, Brother Jake from this podcast and the Brother Jake YouTube channel, and Jake's wife, Erica. We knew each other in Bloomington, Indiana, and Tami recently wrote a book. And so we talk about Jake a little bit. We talk about our experience together a little bit, but mostly this is about Tami's life, the really difficult, challenging things that she went through, and the role that the church played in her life. And it's a complicated role because it helped her so much. And then later in life, she walked away from it. Why? What is that all about? What happened? It's a really interesting story. It's one that I know that Tami is going to be sharing with her believing family, friends. And so I want everyone to know from the start, this episode of Infants on Thrones is a very safe episode for believers. I know we can get critical at times and we can have a tone that is repellent to believers. That's not what this episode is. And this is part one of a two-part episode. And I originally was going to do it this way. So I published part one yesterday to our Patreon supporters. And I was going to wait a week before I published it to the general public. But you know what? Today's my birthday, and I love this story so much, both part one and part two. I'm just going to publish them both now, so I hope that doesn't bother anybody, but that's just what I'm going to do. I'm publishing part one, and then later on today, I'll publish part two. It's such an amazing story. And one more thing I'll say before we get to the episode. If you like Tami, what she has to say, you want to meet her, you want to talk with her, Tami and I are going to record a conversation on Sunday, February 10th. We're calling it Brunch with Tami, I think. Mimosa's optional. And we're going to discuss the book, Enough: How to Liberate Yourself and Remake the World with Just One Word. So if you'd like to join us on Sunday, February 10th, details will be on our Patreon page. That will be for Patreon supporters only. But if you like what we're doing and you'd like to support us on Patreon and like to get more content of Infants on Thrones, then please, by all means, join us on Patreon. But now, let's just get right to this conversation with Tami because it is just amazing.
To Steve, they played pool together.
So Jake was playing pool with Steve last night.
Yeah, I'll send you the picture.
That's awesome. So Jake recognizes Steve. He remembers him. He doesn't look at Steve and think, "Oh, that's a cucumber."
No, he doesn't probably know the word cucumber.
Yeah.
Like nouns, right? He's working on a list, but so this was weird. We got a FaceTime from him and Erica.
Nice.
And so we're sitting in our dining room, and Jake is on the screen, on the computer, and he's smiling and talking, and he remembers a lot of things.
Yeah.
Situational things and interactions with people. And
see, that's like my biggest concern is that when I finally do reconnect with Jake, that he'll only remember the shitty things about me.
Oh my God. No, I think that there's this there's just like a wonderful vibe I get from him.
Oh, good.
Like there's no that part of your brain where you worry about what people think and you caution yourself before speaking. Like he doesn't seem to have as much of that. Oh, so it's just this pure soul coming out of his eyes.
He was always so much of that anyway.
Well, sure. Yeah. Yeah. But he's still Jake. It's really awesome. I was just to tears just watching him. Yeah. On the screen, but.
Well, let's not worry about that microphone headset thing. Let's just start talking. And okay. Are you okay if I share that? Because I started recording as we were talking about that. I think listeners would love to hear an update on people who are actually interacting with Jake and
Yeah. No, yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have much to add to it, but yeah, you can share that.
Yeah, cool. Well, so Tami, what I want to do today is like a little bit of introduction just for the listeners so that they can get to know you. But I kind of want to like go down memory lane for just the two of us too. Between
good.
And then we'll get into your book and this incredible, amazing story. I was just so moved by it. But we'll get to that. So when did you guys move to Bloomington?
Oh God, you're going to ask me for dates.
Well, because this book basically ends in 93 or 94. Is that's when you and Steve got married?
Yeah, we got married in 94.
Yeah.
So Dallin was 6 when we moved to Indiana. And he was born in 96. So 2002.
2002. Okay, I thought it was in the 90s.
Jackie was a baby. Yeah.
Okay. So it's 2002. I thought it'd been earlier because and you had 2 stints in Bloomington.
Yeah. So we did 4 years where Steve got his PhD at IU. And then we moved for his first job to Atlanta. That was 2 years. And then we came back to replace his old professor at IU. And then we were there for 7. So it's 11 total. Yeah. It just seems longer because it was over 13.
Yeah. It does. And it like 2002, even though it's what I'm trying to do the math now, 15 years ago or whatever. It'd be more than that. 16, 17 years ago. Is that right? 17 years ago? It seems insane to me. 2002 does not seem like it was that long ago.
Well, that's because we have such this big lifespan of being old.
Yeah, right.
Relatively speaking, it's not that long ago.
Yeah.
But Dallin's 22 now. He's going to be 23 this summer.
Yeah. So strolling down memory lane. I mean, the first memory that I have of both of you is of Steve more than you, because I remember during that first stint when you were in Bloomington, like I knew who Steve was kind of from Elders Quorum, quiet guy, you know, and what did I do? Like the first time we did any interaction with him was with, Mike, whatever his last name was. And we had a poker night and invited Steve over to the house. And, that's the first that I remembered of him. And I don't really even remember back in 2002, 2003, when all the stuff would have been going on, where my head exactly was with the church.
Right.
I know I was teaching gospel doctrine and
right. I remember you teaching that.
So I want, I know like from previous conversations that you weren't too sure about this whole Glenn Ostlund guy and the influence on your husband.
No, I wasn't. So I was, completely Orthodox in the bubble, of course. Yeah. And you were teaching gospel doctrine, and I loved going to your classes for one because it was so different from the norm, right? Yeah. So I was like really all in true believing, but I liked a little flavor and spice, and so you would ask these questions that everybody was not used to thinking about, and that scared me a little, if I'm honest. But it also was kind of thrilling to watch the dynamic and what people's comments were. Yeah. Your lessons, because they were different. And then, oh man, that was so nice.
They were fun. I liked it, but there was always the pushback. There were the people who really enjoyed it, and then the people who were like, no, this is not the way to do it. And no, that's what ultimately went out. It
threatens their bubble. You can't threaten someone else's belief.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Right. Yeah.
But you did it in a smooth and calming way. It's not that you were at all, I don't remember you being at all combative or pushy with different viewpoints. It just was, it was like clean and calm, but it was different.
Well, thank you for saying, it's interesting to hear that. I didn't have any kind of malicious intent. I didn't have like a big agenda that I was trying to unravel people's belief or I was trying to pop people's bubble. It's just like, that's how I think. That's the way that I approach the scriptures and the stories in the scriptures. And especially as I was there to get a graduate degree in folklore, I was filtering things through, that paradigm that I was learning. And
myth. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, and I think it must've been your second stint, when you guys came back to Bloomington, that I became more aware of like Steve's, I think I kind of knew his disaffection with the church, or not disaffection, but disillusionment with a lot of things. But when you guys came back, he was put in the bishopric almost immediately, right?
He was, and he accepted that. He didn't eat or sleep for a couple of days thinking about it. He didn't want to do it, but our son was 12.
Yeah.
And he was going to have those 6-month interviews with like someone else who was more Orthodox, right?
Yeah.
So he thought, well, if I take this bishopric role, I can interview Dallin.
Yeah.
Protect him from all of that.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to be asking any child those questions, but certainly not someone who is a little just the social dynamic and understanding. And 12 years old. Oh,
yeah.
So he took it, but not for himself, for sure. I mean, he would have been happy leaving the church years ago. If I can say that. I'm going to try not to speak for him too much.
Of course. Yeah, I'm sure. But even as you're giving your impressions, it's not really you're speaking for him. This is just what you've observed. So, you take it with a grain of salt. This is what I think's going on. This is what I think. But I get that. I respect that. And then at some point you started going through your own faith crisis. And I remember how shocking that was kind of to me, because I had always known, but I had always known that you were more accepting of certain things, like with my daughter, Shaylee, who's Dallin's age. And like the ways that you would accept her and that other people kind of didn't, it was unique. But
I saw her as human first and Mormon second.
Yeah.
And that's high ranking for Mormonism should not be second, but most people put it first.
Yeah.
Where's your standing in the church? What is your calling? Like we get updates from family members about, their high callings or new callings, and that shouldn't be important.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's important.
Yeah. And so I knew that there was something there that was kind of different about the way that you saw things. But it really wasn't until that faith crisis. And then, I don't know, it was probably like a year, 2 years, this span that, we'd get together. I don't know if it was never like once a month, but it was like, every other month or something like that, quite, regular. And there were about 4 couples, and, Jake and Erica was part of that, and the Camos, and then you guys.
That was the best.
It was fun getting together, playing poker, and just, like enjoying each other. Yeah. That was really nice. That
was an important time for me just to be, because I was transitioning, and I loved being Mormon. I mean, I totally dug being Mormon because of the community and the support and all of that. And that was new to me. So for 20 years, I just loved it.
Yeah.
Hung on to it, did whatever they told me to do.
Yeah.
With a little flavor, but still did it,
Sure.
But so our group was just an opportunity for me to like breathe for a second.
Yeah.
And consider, what is it that I think, what do I want to do? Because every decision had been made, with the prophet in the background, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was really a sweet time.
It was. And then, I think Jake and Erica moved away first, and then you and Steve went to Orlando, and then Kristen and I are like, well, what are we going to do? And so we eventually moved to Arizona. We're like, we don't know, like our group of friends are gone. And so, and then it really, I think it was, you texted Krista when Jake had his cardiac arrest. That's how we found out about it. And then in the course of the back and forth there, I found out that you had written this book. And you published it like a few months earlier. So September 2018 is when it came out.
Just before, yeah. It was the full moon, I think, in August.
The full moon, timed perfectly.
Went a little mystical there. Yeah,
love it. And I remember even in Indiana that you got involved in writing and you were doing things like that. So I was so happy to see it. And then you sent me a copy. It took a while through the holidays before I sat down to start reading it, but I got through it. Within 2 days. It's so easy to read. It's so powerful. And some of the imagery in here just is amazing. But the story that this tells, Tami, oh my God, Tami, I knew little bits and pieces of this. I didn't know the full thing.
Yeah.
And I thought this is something that I've got to share with the listeners of Infants on Thrones, because it's so, for how long we knew each other and we were kind of in each other's worlds. I never really knew you. I still don't really know all of the things that go on. And that was so clear as I was reading through this memoir about your life and where you came from and the role that Mormonism played in it. And that's a piece of it, but there's, it's a much bigger story than that. And so anyway.
The world is made up of colors and shapes, and I see all that. But when I see people, everyone has a story like this.
Oh, yeah.
And for the most part, women haven't been able to say a lot of things, but their realities have been harsh and horrible, but beautiful at the same time. And so I feel like we're in a place now, as a culture, as a society, that we can talk about them, although it's still shocking. Sure. I almost feel like I need to prep somebody before they buy it. Like, okay, just brace yourself. This could be, this is not your normal book. It's not your normal story, but it is. That's the thing.
It is more common than we're comfortable seeing. And, I used to travel a lot and for work and I would be in the airport. I'd be around all these people and I would think every single person around me has their own story. They're the center of their own universe that, that's what the world is to them. It was one of the things I loved about the television show Lost when that came out. That how all these strangers on an airplane, and then each episode is devoted to finding out a little bit of peeling back the onion of who this person is, what they're bringing to this group. And I always thought that would be really interesting to find out the stories of the people around me. And so here's this one from you. So I'd like to read a section in here, and this is, you don't have page numbers.
I know
in the book, which is interesting, but this is part of chapter 21. So it's way into your story, but I felt like this paragraph right here kind of sums up, to me at least, what this book is really about. And so I want to read this to you and get your thoughts on this. So you say, when kids feel alone and their family sucks, having someone outside who understands can feel ... uplifting. Like you're thinking about, what's the right word here? Uplifting. A lot of church teachings and lessons teach towards living an ideal life. And that can be uplifting too. But we all start our progress from different places. Assuming everybody's life is peachy doesn't help when it's not. My favorite lessons and testimonies are from people who have an understanding of suffering and choose to make their lives better.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. My favorite. Okay, I don't think I put this in there, so I can share it. There was a testimony meeting once. I think it was in Bloomington, but it could have actually, I think it was in Utah, which makes it even more of a contrast. But this man, this ginormous man, stood up to go, walk to the podium to bear his testimony, and he had a short sleeve button up on with no tie. So first of all, and then, this, like, men have very few choices, right? So what you wear is important. But also he had this beard in Utah, Provo County. And he had all these tattoos down his arms, not sleeves really. It's just like little vignettes down to his wrists. And he stood up and gave the most beautiful, sincere testimony. Wasn't even, I mean, that word's like not enough, but it was the most beautiful thing, and it brought me to tears. Mm. And what was sad too, though, is I knew I'm all in at this point still, but I knew that a lot of people would dismiss what he said.
Just because of the way he looked.
Because of how he looked, yeah. So my favorite thing is to get to the core of someone, who they really are. Yeah. Right? And those conversations, reading memoirs and talking to people about their own stories, that's just the stuff life is made of. If I could do that on a regular, I'd be happy.
That's what I thought as I was reading through this memoir. I don't read memoirs. Like, I'm used to reading like these academic or, like modeling after academic kind of texts, and I get information from it and it's valuable to me, but I can get really bored in it too. And but this was just so accessible and real and exposing, here's the core.
Yeah, there you go.
Here it is. So the way I feel about this, in talking about your book, and it's your thing, so I'll respect how you want to do it. But I don't feel like I feel like giving spoilers is okay, because the real power in this book is the way that it's written and the way that it makes you feel when you read it. So even giving spoilers about like some of the most impactful parts of your story aren't really spoiling anything. But if there's things that you want to hold back.
No, I'm totally fine with talking about any of it. And actually I was curious, where your questions would go. Like, what would Glenn ask about?
Well, you'll find out.
It says something about each person.
Sure.
Right.
It does. Yeah. So you start the story. You're 22 years old.
Yeah.
And you're a telemarketer. And were you in Michigan or Wisconsin? It was one of the two.
I was in Wisconsin.
Okay.
And I grew up with a mom, no dad. And my mom's parents lived in Michigan.
Okay. Right.
And I saw them like 3 or 4 times my entire life,
Yeah.
And I was working as a telemarketer, and I called my grandparents.
Just because you were like bored as a telemarketer and you wanted to talk to somebody, and you're like, I'm doing this anyway.
I don't know what I was telling myself.
Yeah.
But when you read it, it all points to, it points to various things, but I find out in a few months after I arrive in Michigan that I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
So I think I called them because, some part of my hormone was talking to some part of my brain. And
okay. So when you called them, you were pregnant, but you didn't know it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't get that part. Okay. Because you kind of skip around in time a little bit.
Yeah.
And you're telling kind of more the story of the things that are important rather than the chronology of the impact. Okay. So
I think there was just some sequences there where I don't even know myself what I'm doing.
Sure.
What the hell? Why would I call them?
So you allude to several things that happen before you're 22, like at age 16, your mom kicks you out of your house.
Yeah.
Things that you talk about when you were 3 and, very, very, very young. But I was curious, what your history was like, with the church, at what point you grew up. And I know you attended a little bit, but then kind of not, so that when you went back to church later on, it wasn't like a brand new conversion. It was a reconversion to this.
Yeah.
What was that like? Your mom joined the church?
Yeah. So I wrote the first version of all of this was like birth to age 22.
Mm.
And that's just too much. It's boring. Like, I don't know if you've read The Glass Castle, but it's like every chapter after chapter is like, and then this bad thing happened, and then this bad thing happened. Mm-hmm. And it's just kind of monotonous. So the second version, this part where I just do 1 year of time,
mm-hmm.
I had to include some things from the past, but it's maybe I'll do that sometime in the future. But so my birth mother, joined the church when I was 2.
Okay.
I think the 2 handsome young missionaries came to the door, and she let them in because that's what she would do. They were probably cute,
Mm-hmm.
and she used to talk about, she had a beer. Oh, I'm getting tense. She had a beer in one hand and a cigarette in the other, and that's how she first learned about the church. But we would go. She joined, and we would go to church.
And this was in Wisconsin?
In Wisconsin,
okay. Yeah.
She would go to church and act like everything was fine. So for 3 hours of each week, life was safe. And at home, everything stayed the same. And in a lot of ways, she just carried on these traditions of her fathers, of her family. But so I had this view of like church is wonderful, but temporary and not part of reality. And I was taught just like any other kid, and except for only, the nice parts. And and I went to Young Women's, but then when I was 16 and kicked out, I was focused on like, where am I going to sleep? Where am I going to stay? And trying to stay in school, but work jobs to make money at the same time. And so I wasn't thinking about church too much. So I stopped going at 16, and then started again when I was 22.
Yeah. Okay. So basically from age 3 to 16, you did go, if not every week, mostly every week.
I would say half time or more.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
2 out of the 4 Sundays we were probably there.
Yeah.
My mom didn't drive for, I guess when I started middle school, she wasn't driving anymore. She had multiple sclerosis. And so people would give us rides. We were that family, the poor family that was constantly in need of service, that was barely able to get back. The family, like every ward's got families like this. So those top 10 families who do all the work, they're constantly helping us and helping us move and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And then you had siblings as well. You got a brother, Jeff, is that right?
Yeah.
And he's older than you or younger than you?
He's a year younger.
Okay.
But he was taller and fierce. He was kind of fierce.
And then Diana, who's 6 years older, is that right? Something like, or 4?
I think she's 7 years older.
Okay.
So she left. My mom had actually been married to her father, and he filed for custody after they got divorced. And so when I was 4, she was 7, and that's when she left. And so I always felt like she was kind of rescued. She got out. Jeff and I didn't. So Jeff was a year younger, and he was blonde. He had blonde hair and blue eyes, most beautiful blue eyes. And when he was about 9, I guess, he started getting into trouble, going to like juvie on and off and doing some really crazy stuff for a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
But he was as tall as a high schooler.
Okay. So. All right. So that's kind of the family background, and so your book starts, you're 22 years old, you're pregnant, but you don't know it yet. And the reader doesn't know that yet. Mm-hmm. And you've got this interest in reconnecting with family. And so you call your grandpa, find out that your grandmother's in ill health, you offer to go and help them. And so you just kind of quit your job that day, drive to Michigan and just live with your grandparents. And, the interaction between you and your grandparents is strained. There's a lot of stuff there, but then when you go to that coffee shop or the diner for coffee with your grandpa and he drops some truth bombs on you, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Holy shit. So do you want to talk about what that was like for you?
Okay. Yeah. So, I was just been there like a day. I just got there, and it's the next day, and we're going to go to the grocery store. This is the big major event of the week, is to go to the grocery store. And He's kind of flirting with the waitress, which is uncomfortable, but not surprising. Like that's his flavor. He's kind of perpetually horny, but it just sounds bad to say that. Anyway, so we sit down and we get
It's nothing compared to what you wrote.
I know, but this is like adult me, right? Like,
yeah, right.
And my life is so flipped from all of that. So it's tense to like revisit it. I actually felt great publishing the book because I could let go a little bit.
Oh, good.
Like it's done, right? And so we sit down at this diner, and I ask him, "Who's my father?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know?" And he, because I'm convinced at this point, my brother and I have the same man listed on our birth certificates, but I mean, it can't be. It just can't be. And there's such a difference between the way my mother treated me and then the way she treated him. He was almost revered in a way, and I wasn't. And so we sit down and I ask him, and he says he doesn't know. And he starts going in like, I don't know what could motivate him to tell. Why would you tell someone your darkest, most evil deeds you've ever done in your life? But
jeez.
He's so creepy. Anyway, he says, that he was sent to jail because he molested my mother, and she got pregnant when she was 11 years old. And he went to prison for 6 years because she, and he's swearing and like, not kind about her, like blaming her, right?
Calling her that little bitch.
Thank you for saying it. Cause I have, this is interesting because, I have people from all facets of my life, my Orthodox family and my non-member friends, right? So it's just an interesting, I have to balance.
Right, sure.
For saying that.
Sure. Yeah.
So he blames her, but he comes back. At 11 years old, my mother is sent away. This is very typical of the women's story, but they never got to tell that. But she's sent away to another state to either have the baby or to have an abortion, although I don't think that was probably what happened. But no one ever speaks about it. No one ever talked about it. So we don't know what happened, but she comes back.
She said that it was his, that she had she was impregnated by her own father. That's why he went to jail. But and he wasn't denying it. But he was still angry about it. But who else would she have been fooling around with at age 11? It's horrible.
11.
Oh, it's horrible.
It's horrible.
Oh.
Right. So as a parent now, I can see my daughter when she was 11 years old. And not even then, how long was he having sex with her before that, right? Because she suddenly goes through puberty and she's pregnant almost immediately. So
oh, geez.
How long? But
and
so
his
gone
excuse
for 6 years.
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So she's gone for 6 years, or he's gone for 6 years, and she is allowed, I guess, to grow up a little bit during that time. And he comes home. She's 17 years old, and my mom has a boyfriend. They've never had sex, and they're kind of, serious, falling in love, I guess, for, the first time she's able to have those feelings. And he comes back and suddenly she's pregnant again.
Oh, her father. Oh, when he gets out of jail. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
Right.
So he gets out of jail and he's back and she's pregnant again. And so her boyfriend marries her to get her out of the house.
Mm.
I mean, these stories though, I feel like everyone's got some story back in their family, and it's always at the expense of the woman. I feel like there's some power in just saying what's true. And my mom, she would never have said these things to anyone, let alone in a book or talk about it on a podcast. But I have choice. I can do it.
Right. And it, There's a lot of ways that you could look at your mom. Like you could look at your mom as being very heartless. Like she does not treat you well at all. And there's several encounters in the book where that's on full display. And what that's like in real life must be even, more real than what you have in that book. And so you could look at her as this kind of monster figure, but then realize...
Which I did when I was 14, 15, 16.
Yes. And then you realize what she went through.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't blame her then, right?
And like, and then there's this like instinct for compassion against, towards this person that otherwise just seems so devoid of any compassion.
Yeah.
Like how confusing that must be for you.
It is. It is confusing. It has been. So I don't, there is a separation of emotion. So I feel for her and I don't blame her. 100% don't blame her. Although I shouldn't say that. I mean, we all have choices.
Sure.
We all have choices. Like I feel like I had a lot of things happen to me and I had choice about how I was going to react to that.
Yeah.
Maybe she just didn't feel like she had any choices. I don't know, but I don't blame her. I totally blame him.
Yeah.
I have real men issues.
Yeah. But, and the response that he gave you that you wrote about when he was in that diner, there were two things that really stuck out to me as just so horrendous. And one, he blamed his sexual abuse on the war because there was a bomb that went off near him and he's had a semi-erection ever since.
Yeah.
That was like, what the hell are you telling? Like, what?
Yeah.
And then when he's telling you that your mother at 11 had a child, he says something like, but it's okay because that child didn't live anyway.
Yeah.
And I just went, what? What kind of a mind feels that, thinks that, or then thinks it's right to share that with you in this like day after that you've been back. And as I'm having this conversation with you, I'm recognizing that I'm laughing a lot.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. It's okay.
It's just the way that I'm dealing with the awfulness of this, and
which is an interesting study in itself.
Sure.
Like, how do people deal with really crazy shit? Excuse my language.
Yeah.
That happens to them or in their own lives or in the lives of their parents. How do you frame that?
Sure.
What is your reaction? And then like, how does the reaction change over time? So laughing is definitely a good way to go.
Okay.
Good job.
Thanks.
I think I drank a lot in middle school and high school. And a little after that, I just needed to not feel anything.
Yeah. And the story about how you got your car and especially those pink stripes.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
I love those stripes.
I'm sure you did.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't going to put that in there. And I submitted the chapter to my writing group, which we do twice a month. And that was one of the questions. So there's one man in my writing group and all the rest are women. And he wanted to know more about the car, right? And the dynamics of how that came about. So
the dynamics of how that came about. And we can go ahead and keep that a mystery. So if anybody wants to find out, they can get your book and read about it. But
there you go.
It's very revelatory of how, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about lately is the way that the imprint that we make in the world impacts other people, and the imprint that they make in the world impacts us. And it's so detailed and complex. And I simplify it by thinking of like a very smooth surface of a pond or something that you drop a pebble in and there's these ripples. And if you drop another pebble next to it, the ripples hit the ripples. And then the more of those that you have, there's just like these ripples. And, you can get all woo-woo new age and go talk about vibrations and stuff, but that's actually really what's going on. And we are making vibrations and ripples and things like that in the world, even through our emotions and stuff like that all the time, and how that interacts and forms us, and then the choices that we make form us. So that was kind of the mindset that I had as I was going into this. So I'm looking at all these things that you're talking about and going, wow, it's amazing. And then the way that those different influences pushed you and moved you in different directions, and the choices that you made pushed you and moved you in different directions. It's just such an interesting story. So I think that detail about the way that the car, that you got those pink stripes and all the little details that you added in that just added that context and flavor. And all right. So then as you're there with your grandparents, you have this urge for a family reunion, to reconnect with your mom and your brother and your sister and an uncle, right? That you haven't seen forever. Mm-hmm. And so you reach out to them, and then you explain that they all show up except for your brother, because your brother is at home with his pregnant wife and 17-year-old stepdaughter who is also pregnant with his child.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Yeah. And his wife, so he's 21 at the time. Oh. I'm 22. And his wife was 39, 40 years old, something.
Gosh.
Right. Wow. And so her daughter is his age, basically. And, predatory behavior, right? Like that was probably a factor in why they got married.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there's a chance he could listen to this. But like you said, I'm just saying, like, I'm telling what I saw, and that is a truth. And if you don't want someone to talk about your truth, then don't do something that you don't want to be a reality. Like, live your life the way that you think.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to have any fence, any barrier around. He's just carrying on the traditions, I guess.
That's right. Yeah. That's it's these echoes that reverberate, from generation to generation. And that's no excuse.
No,
but it's an influential factor in it. And, anyway, so you have this family reunion and it's not great.
Not great. I don't know what I was thinking, really.
Well, you were thinking that another book that I've been reading recently is called Social, by Matthew. I forget. I can give you the reference later. Okay. But the book Social, and it just talks about the way that we're wired. The way that we have evolved through hundreds of thousands of years in the safety of very close, tight-knit groups, and we have evolved to desire that connection. And you grew up without that connection. Right. And through the course of this book, as you eventually come back to the Mormon Church, you find that connection there. And it's not, it's there's very solid biological evidence showing why, so like you might say, I don't know what I was thinking, but you had this urge to have that social connection with your family, and to forgive the things in the past if it means that you can have that connection, to give them another chance, to show that love and to grow that love, to give them a chance to do it. So I don't think there's any, like, you shouldn't feel bad or anything about like, what was I thinking? Why would I do that? But, it's instructive of your core and what's important to you and what you want. And so you bring them together. It doesn't work out very well at all. And then you find out that you're pregnant. Yeah.
Within like a week or two after the reunion. So that didn't go very well, and that's over. And I've got this job at a local grocery store to fill some time. Mm-hmm. Because my heart was beating faster than my grandparents. Like I needed more to do besides crossword puzzles and Lawrence Welk. So So I got a little job.
I got to tell you, I can't see Lawrence Welk now anymore without thinking of the Saturday Night Live version with Kristen Wiig and the little hands coming out. Like I just think trying to pop the bubbles. Oh, that's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
Yeah, they love that. So I had this little job, and it's when I was getting ready for the job to go to work after showering that I noticed just this tiny, slight change in my body, just from kind of a boxy girl. I mean, totally hot, but like boxy girl.
I love the way you talked about yourself, by the way, with that, like that would be interesting for the listeners of Infants on Thrones, at least when we do surveys and I ask questions, the respondents are, 75%. Or men, mostly men that listen to Infants on Thrones that don't always get the female perspective on things. So it's interesting if you could share more about how you felt about yourself and your body and just what you had to offer and how that.
Oh, okay. So, I was totally hot, but, but I felt like my purpose in being alive was to be looked at by men, to have sex with men whenever they wanted to. This is my purpose. Like the first time I find out in the diner, the first time that's from the dream. I had a dream while I was there in Michigan. Anyway, first time I had sex with a man, I was 4 years old. And so,
and you remembered that in the dream, right?
Yeah.
That was one of your mom's boyfriends.
Yeah. Ralph.
Yeah. And the perfect name for it.
I know. Right. I know.
It makes you just want to Ralph when you,
yeah.
But and the way that you wrote that too was so simple and powerful because you're talking about this dream and you said, he took it from me.
Yeah.
And you don't elaborate on what that is. And then
I didn't even remember. I didn't know this growing up. So I grew up without that memory, right? And a lot of memories, like a lot of years are just kind of voids. But I think that's a good thing because I was able to grow up without that, plastered across my forehead, so to speak. But so this is my purpose in life. And the other thing that was very clear to me from a young age is you can use your body in order to get something that you want. So if I am hungry because I have no food, I can use my body to feed myself. If I need pink stripes on my awesome car.
Oh, you gave it away.
Sorry.
You just gave it away. That's all right. It's your book.
I can use my body to get what I need.
Yeah.
And so it's the opposite. It's the opposite of what your body should be used for. And honestly, I got to mute my phone. This is like, this goes into like me now. I'm going to be 50 years old this summer, which is also shocking.
Right.
But I still don't feel comfortable with the things like connecting and emotions and true love and just being, I feel unsafe almost all the time. And I don't know how to erase that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to fix that. But I've come so far.
Yeah.
But I also, there's something, I grew up with this brother. We were in the same house. Same mother. We even went to school at the same time. And he did not see that there was anything wrong with what was going on. And I almost always did. I always had a feeling of like, this is not even ideal. This is wrong. This is so wrong. And so
he was abusing you as you were growing up?
Later when he started when he was 9, he started drinking and hanging out with older guys that were doing crazy stuff. Like I remember this time I was laying out in the sun, which is in Wisconsin, as
Yeah.
It's just really a wish more than a reality. And there was a meadow by our apartment complex, and this girl came out of the meadow, and she was kind of arranging her dress. She must have been like 10 years old or something, and I think I was 13, something like this. And then she comes out, walks to this other building, and goes in, and she just is looking around like she's kind of scared and terrified. I knew exactly what had happened to her. That look of self-preservation and fear and pain, physical pain, and also emotional pain. And then my brother comes out of the meadow with this other guy, and I know what he's done. And he walks right past. He looks at me, but he just kept walking. So how does that happen?
What did he do in the meadow? I didn't follow that.
Oh, he totally raped her. They totally
took a girl in. Oh gosh.
Yeah. Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
So at 9 years old, I think when he was 10, he got his first girl pregnant. Like, just this void of anything good. So how can two people grow up in the same place and like have completely different ethical radars? I don't understand. But I used to tell myself, well, I was just born more advanced than he was. My spirit is just way more advanced than his was. But I don't know if that's true. I really don't understand why. Yeah. But I'm glad that I always saw that as off, and it's allowed me, to think that other possibilities can also be mine. I can have a life that is beautiful and wonderful because I am beautiful and wonderful, and I don't have to be what they were.
Yeah. Wow. Jeez. But just this environment that you grew up in and the ways that it shaped you, even unconsciously, probably mainly unconsciously. Like pushing those things out of your immediate awareness because it's just too painful, but it's still there. And, like you're saying now, it's still hard to trust because you were betrayed at every turn. Everyone that was supposed to be there to trust, to put your trust in, let you down, and learning that from a very early age in such stark ways. It's why when I finished reading this book, I just had tears in my eyes for you and for you and Steve. And just like, this is a person that I've known for so long and I had no idea. I'm getting tears in my eyes now. Had no idea that like the things that I complain about, the things when I think my life is hard, just, pale in comparison. All right. So I want to get back to your story here, because there's some parts in your book that I want to read. And we've kind of gotten to that point where you discovered that you're pregnant and you have this choice that you're going to make, like what are you going to do? And you made the choice to get an abortion. And you write about what that was like. And so I want to read this. You have these questions, and you say, I haven't been to the Mormon church since I was 16, but still, I wonder what they would say about a baby. Although Sunday lessons, never once assumed that one of the girls in my class would get pregnant before getting blissfully married in the temple. I wonder if the boys had the same chastity lessons. And then this point, these next couple of paragraphs, you got them in italics, and because they're just so poignant. These questions that were going through your head. At what point does a baby's spirit enter into the body? Is it 13 weeks? Is that why the abortion clinic I called yesterday does not do abortions after 12 weeks? That's not the sciencey answer, not the doctor answer. Is the spirit in there when it starts to move? Probably, maybe. If I got an abortion, would the spirit of this baby be reassigned to another body? Or is this its only chance to be born? Would I ruin this person's chance to live on earth? Would God work it out and not blame the baby spirit for my actions? I can't wrap my brain around the thought that I might wield that much eternal power, or any power at all. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's so much going on in those words and those thoughts. And you say, I have so many questions, and then you go on. So I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if you could really say it any better than you said it there, but like what a decision to make that a man never really has to ask those questions. Like the closest experience I have to that is, and my first wife, Tracy, but between Shaylee and Emma, she miscarried, and probably about, I don't know, it was maybe about 12 weeks or so. No, maybe it wasn't that long. I don't know how long it was, but it was really sad. It was sad. It was devastating for her. It was devastating for me, although in a different way. And I asked myself similar questions about, like the spirit of the baby. And, like, okay, does that then mean that the spirit comes in the next child? There's these questions that you ask. But to have that, like, I didn't have to feel responsible for those things where Tracy did, even though it was an accident, even though it was a miscarriage, feeling that responsibility. Can you talk about that a little bit more? What that experience is like?
So I never thought I would include this part. Originally I was writing this for my kids because I wanted them to see a different view. We've given them this beautiful kind of sheltered life. I just wanted them to see it from a different perspective, and maybe understand my imperfectness, but it's, in the end, I put it in. I've never really been able to talk about it, and I never actually could say the word, Mm-hmm. And when I told Steve, when we were dating and kind of getting closer to being engaged, I think I told him, but I didn't actually say it. He kind of guessed after I started crying, but so the responsibility is mine. It's entirely mine. Mm. And it was a choice I made to not be like my mother. Mm-hmm. At that point, I would have been able to give a child nothing because I wasn't able to give myself anything at all. I could have given the baby up for adoption. I could have had the baby and done that. I would have had to live at my grandparents' house, I think, to do that. Mm-hmm. And at that point, my grandpa hadn't, I think I say in the book that later he gets into bed with me. That year, he gets into bed with me after my abortion, and he, wants to have sex. And so I'm glad that I didn't have to stay there longer.
Yeah.
But could I have done better? Yeah, I could have done better.
Oh, it kind of makes me sad that you feel that way, that you're still kind of like,
I'm just being, I know.
I know you're being honest about what you're feeling. And it's a hard thing to say, I can't even put myself in your shoes
So I think that women in particular, and maybe it's a Mormon thing, I don't know, because I didn't spend those 20 years doing something else. I was Mormon for 20. So maybe it's a Mormon thing, but that push to, like, every Sunday in Relief Society, the push to be better, to be more perfect, to earn your salvation, right? That was passionate. I was passionate about that because I needed to earn, because I had done so many things wrong. And that framework of sin and redemption that the church gave, it was helpful in that there was a way to feel better about those things.
Yeah.
But it was also like an eternal damnation kind of thing.
Yeah.
later, before I met Steve, I was applying to go on a mission. I wanted to be a missionary.
Yeah.
And they have rules. You can't have an abortion and go on a mission.
Right.
There are just hard, fast rules. And so that was rejected. But yeah, I don't know what else to say about that.
Well, okay, I'm gonna read another part from your book, and this is a hard this is hard stuff. So you go through with it, and you describe what it's like being in the clinic and being on the table.
Yeah.
And you say they repeatedly tell me not to move. It's very important that you do not move in this video that they showed you. And so you say, 1 second, I'm fine. Nervous breathing, short and fast, but fine. The nurse is holding my hand really tight. And the next, this incredible pain. I'm screaming. Of course, even with all the coaching, I try to get away from the pain, my lifelong quest, which is, and move my bottom away from the doctor and his machine. They are upset with me. And
right.
that your thought is that, I've disappointed them, in that moment. Oh, wow. So, and then consequently, the fetus is torn, the doctor says. I have to go back in and try to get all of it out. But there may be some tissue left in there attached to the uterine wall. 7 months later, when I'm in jail, my body naturally expels the rest while talking to a visitor through the bulletproof window. I suddenly double over, groaning with pain. I see concern and frustration on my visitor's face because she can't catch me. Yet she still reaches out her hands. I will always appreciate the look in her eyes of love and compassion. That is so like concise and powerful writing of like, wait a minute. Okay, we're talking about abortion, and now you're like 7 months later when I'm in jail? What?
Yeah.
There's more that's going to happen here?
Yeah.
And who is this person on the other side of the story? And we find out later who that is.
Yeah.
Just like from a writing perspective, it's so good and powerful and like setting up these things that are going to happen later. But just, Tami.
Thank you.
Tami.
Yes.
This is more than just something that you wrote in the book. You lived it, and you still have those experiences and those memories and thoughts and feelings, even if it's just in your subconscious inside of you. And I don't know what to say about that.
There's a part of me that, at the risk of being too real, like there's a part of me that always feels less than.
Yeah.
There's, and maybe everyone feels this, but on a core level of humanity, I just, I'm okay with sitting back and letting other people have the light shine on them, because sometimes when the light is so bright, like you can see things that are disagreeable or socially inappropriate,
socially uncomfortable.
Socially uncomfortable.
But the bravery, Tami, like the bravery, and I'm being presumptuous. I'm always presumptuous. I'm a presumptuous person. So I apologize if I'm too presumptuous here, but the health that you have being in the place that you're in, to be comfortable to share this with other people and to be brave is so admirable. Like, I have so much respect for that. And I know having done this podcast for as long as I have and hearing back from listeners, I know this is going to be really impactful to a lot of people, women, especially men as well. And I mean, just the bravery in being real. And saying, yes, there are these social norms that say, don't talk about that kind of stuff. It's uncomfortable. We want to pretend that stuff doesn't exist. But it does exist, doesn't it, dear listeners? And thank you for listening to part 1. Part 2, there's about an hour and a half left of this conversation, and it's amazing. And again, I want to remind you, if you want to meet Tami and interact with her, we're going to be doing a live conversation about the book Enough. And that's going to be on Sunday, February 10th at 12 noon Eastern. Details for how to access that live event you'll find on Patreon. And wow, I just want to thank Tami once again. This is an amazing story. It was so fun to be able to sit down and have this conversation with her. I hope that it's been enjoyable to all of you. Part 2 will be coming shortly. I'm not going to make you wait for very long, but there's just some things that I got to do on the edits, and so I want to get this first part out to you as quickly as possible. So thanks again for listening to Infants on Thrones. Part 2 coming up.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones. Infants on Thrones.